Snowflake and Safe Space are the twins, and their names are very similar to screen time. It's this idea that these are terms that get thrown around on the internet that they don't see as derogatory, to take those words and kind of wear them as badges of honor. Safe Space is kind of a big, burly, sort of stereotypical jock. He can create force fields, but he can only trigger them if he's protecting somebody else. Snowflake is non-binary and goes by they, them. Snowflake has the power to generate individual crystallized snowflake-shaped shurikens. The connotations of the word snowflake in our culture right now are something fragile. And this is a character who is turning it into something sharp. Snowflake is the person who has the more offensive power.
What the f? No, seriously, you see this on a shelf in a comic book store, and next to it you see this. Where are you going to spend your money? Honest question. I would like to apologize because I feel a little bit under the weather. And I got punished for it because I woke up, I said this is going to be something really interesting to talk about. And by the time I get to talk about, every other YouTuber already talked about it. So I'm really curious if I can bring something new to the table. But let's talk about a couple of interesting things. First of all, I have been reading a lot of what these creators are saying in different interviews and different TED Talks, because I want to get into the vibe if I'm going to have a channel where occasionally I talk about things like this. And what I heard just baffled me. So here's a zinger for you. The people at Marvel do not care about sales anymore. Like, they legitimately do not consider a comic book to be a success if it has sales or if it doesn't have sales. And to me, this way of thinking just baffled me. What they consider successful is if a comic book gets a prize. So if the New York Times consider the specific comic book to be prize-worthy, they consider that success. Because these people, they do not write in order to do good business and in order to make profit for their companies. These are like ticks, like parasites, leeching off fame from the industry in order to give that fame to themselves and to their friends. So what they're hoping to achieve is, if they make a comic book, hopefully they get a TV show out of it, or they get a big screen event out of it, and that's what they're aiming for. They're not aiming for comics to be popular and to make a lot of sales. And I'm not sure exactly how long this bullshit is going to last. Now, I'm not an expert in economics, but I do notice that, given the fact that most people are told to stay at home, they're not going to go and watch a lot of Disney movies. So Disney is going to lose a lot of money. And after this bullshit is gone, we're going to get a little bit of an economic hurdle. And a lot of people are going to be worried about finding a job and not going to have a lot of money in order to spend on entertainment. So there's going to be a culling, if you will, of bullshit. You're only going to have people surviving that actually make a good product, because up till now, you had people that were willing to throw money into this crap. Now, not so much. So I do not know how long this wokeness is going to survive the coming age, where it's going to be very difficult for people and businesses will have to put out a good product or they might go away. Now, what I find interesting is that they are literally spiting a part of the audience. Like, they, from the get-go, are assuming that the people that use these words in disparaging ways, this is not for you. This is not the type of comic that we want you to read. The next coming of age, they're going to beg for every dollar. And they're going to realize that even a Trump supporter dollar still is a dollar. So they're going to beg those people to come back, because they're going to have some big financial problems. And what's interesting is that I've read a little bit about the history of Wonder Woman. And Wonder Woman was also a character that wanted to portray a message. This was during the time where women were forced to dress in a specific way. Like if you wanted to go to the beach as a woman, they would literally measure your skirt to see if it's appropriate. And Wonder Woman was skimpily clad specifically to fight against this way of thinking. And this is where you also have that song, Baby It's Cold Outside, where a woman wants to spend time with a man, but because of the cultural ramifications, she is being iffy about it, and the man has to convince her. Like both of these were revolutionary for their time, and the way they did it wasn't to spite the people that didn't like women being skimpily clad, wasn't to spite the religious people. The way it was done is like, okay, Wonder Woman comes from this different culture of Amazons, and that's how she dresses. And within the Wonder Woman comic, other women dressed conservatively, but she was different. And this is also how Star Trek used to do politics back in the day. First of all, the action takes place in the far, far future, so nothing that happens to the people there affects us now. And secondly, and this is the most important thing, is that the Starship Enterprise would go to a distant planet somewhere, and the people there would have some social issues. And then Picard might moralize and judge how the people on the planet live and how they should live. But it seemed as if they were judging the people on that planet. It doesn't seem like they were judging you, the viewer, for the way you thought. And it kind of separated the problems from that universe to the problems that are today. So if comic book writers would actually be talented and they would actually want to push an agenda, what they should do is to create an alternative universe where you show the positive aspects of safe spaces and snowflake culture. Now, I don't think you can do this because what you're advocating for is tyrannical and oppressive, and you don't realize that, and I'm going to explain why. Can't be asked in a 10-minute video. But this would be the correct way to do it, because this is how Star Trek did it. It created a utopia, a world that was so beautiful that the viewer actually wanted to live there. And you have counterexamples, like, I suppose, the way Orwell does his work, is to create a world so horrible that people do not want to live there. So I guess another way Marvel could do it is to create a world without safe spaces and without snowflakes to show us that it's such a horrible world that we would want to have safe spaces and snowflakes in real life. That's how you actually make good propaganda. But in order to make good propaganda, the end goal needs to be something that the overwhelming amount of people actually want to have. So that's how you actually put politics into comic books. And that's how they were pushing for change. It wasn't preachy, it wasn't moralizing, it wasn't telling people that, hey, you're wrong if you think like this. They were just offering, like, this is how women would look like in an alternative universe, where they would be allowed to dress however they want. And there were politics in comics, but it was done in a way that it wasn't preaching to the reader. It wasn't in your face, and you didn't know that the guy who drew it views you as a necessary evil, that if you talk with the Marvel editor, he will spite you on Twitter. Like, the idea of contacting a person that you like that draws comics and they're going to be spiteful, meanful, vengeful to you on Twitter as the consumer was unthinkable. Like, back then it was the idea of the customer being always right. So it's kind of funny to see now that these people are attacking the same revolutionary comics that existed back then. Like, they attacked Wonder Woman for being skimpily clad. They attacked the song Baby It's Cold Outside for encouraging rape culture or whatever they're going with. And instead they're trying to push their thing knowing that they're going to piss off people, and the whole reason they do it is so that they can get like a prize from the New York Times. And again, like, the people who are at the New York Times, they do not read comic books. They read other type of entertainment. So this is why they're not selling. And they're driving the industry to the ground. And, you know, these people, they make a name for themselves. And I think it works in a culture where people have a lot of money to throw around. Where people have a lot of money for these, I don't know, bombastic projects. But I definitely think that if you read Business Insider and you read Financial Times, things are going to go for the worse. I'm no economist, but anyone can assume that if you halt the economy of a country for more than a month, there will be repercussions. I don't know how bad the repercussions are going to be, but I definitely assume that they might be significant. So the age of the woke might come to an end. You're going to see companies going broke, like literally, and I'm not talking about like small companies, like companies that people would consider too big to fail might fail unless they start putting out good products so that people go watch it. And if Disney is going to have a little bit of financial issues, they're going to start firing people. And up till now, they used to fire the muscle. Like if you look at an IT company or even like a gaming company, like Blizzard, for example, they would fire developers, the actual people doing the work. But I think that this time around, they will fire developers, but they will also fire people from HR. They will also fire diversity officers. They will also start firing from the marketing team. They will also start firing from the legal team because there is no other way that they will survive. They need to make these cuts. So I genuinely think that this might be the last of the woke that we get to see. And for a while, maybe we're going to see a little bit more wokeness out of the inertia because most of these projects are being green-lighted months or sometimes years in advance. So we might see the churning of what's to come. But after a while, they will realize that they just can't afford to piss off half of their clientele anymore. They're going to make things that appeal to everyone. And honestly, this doesn't appeal to everyone. You're not going to sell this in Romania, okay? No one is going to buy this in Eastern Europe. People would buy Spider-Man, they would buy Superman. They're not buying this. This is just, no. You take this shit and sell it in California. Unfortunately, the people in California are told to stay indoors and they're not going to be able to buy this. Such a shame. Let me know what you think and I'll see you guys in the comment sections.